Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jane Harmon, President and CEO of the Wilson Center, greeting many good friends from Lebanon, and particularly my former colleague in the United States Congress, Nick Rahal. Delighted to see you here. As many of you know, or certainly as some of you know, during my own long career in Congress, I traveled to the Middle East at least 25 times. I lost count. Many of those visits included visits to Lebanon, a fabulous place with a storied history and a history of tolerance and a government that functioned. This is maybe some lessons we could continue to learn in our own country, that functioned with a representation of different parts of its population. Lebanon was a true success story. I actually think Lebanon is still a success story. However, it is burdened with enormous issues like the influx of refugees from Syria. Lebanon has been more generous than many countries in the world in accepting these refugees and in finding a way forward with them and with its own population. And it is really special to me today that we can announce the Wilson Center's Middle East program and Safadi Foundation announced that the Wilson Center Middle East program and Safadi Foundation USA are launching a new partnership on Lebanon, which includes today's launch of Lebanese Ideas Forum, a place where scholars, journalists, policymakers, and diplomats can come together to talk about Lebanon, the huge opportunities of Lebanon, and its relationships in the wider region, with the United States and with Europe. As I said, why Lebanon? Because it is an important partner whose voice is not always heard, especially on key issues like the fight against ISIS. I mentioned that Syria is a neighbor to Lebanon and that Lebanon has been colossally generous in taking in 1.5 million refugees to date for a country with a population of about 4.5 million. That's a quarter of Lebanon's population. And Lebanon's political crisis is newly resolved after a 2-year period without a president. Now the president and prime minister are from opposing parties, that's in the Lebanese tradition, it seems to me, and have agreed to work together. So there is political will to tackle hard issues. Again, America, listen up. We could do better if our parties cooperated with each other. Lebanon's foreign minister, Gebran Bassil, is one of the most influential members of the cabinet and son-in-law of the new president. And he has a fantastic personal signature. I just witnessed that because we have a new speaker wall, and it is quite a sight to behold. He is in Washington as part of the anti-ISIS coalition and, of course, to launch or co-launch today's forum. Before he speaks, I believe I'm introducing Laura Alame, yes I am, who is a Californian from the Los Angeles area, just like me, who worked on Capitol Hill, just like me. She worked for for Henry Hyde, who for many, many years was the extremely able chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. She has a Lebanese father. I've been able to find all these things out. And she has breathed new life into the Safadi Foundation USA. And I think, Laura, are you coming to say a few words right now? And then we will turn the forum over to Omri Barki, who very ably heads our Middle East program, and he and the foreign minister, I guess, will have a conversation. I think that's the way we're doing it. And so please welcome the head of the Safadi USA Foundation, Laura Alame. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I want to wish everyone a happy Lebanese Mother's Day. In many traditions, spring represents the beginning of a new year. So may this year be the year that recognizes the contributions and potential of Lebanese women every day and not just today. My name is Lara Aleme, and I'm the president of Safadi Foundation USA. Launched in 2008, we are a nonprofit dedicated to advancing human development in Lebanon. Through a variety of programs that include women's empowerment, mobilizing youth, education and training, the Safadi Foundation in Lebanon is on the front lines every day, working to build an environment that preserves the values and heritage of coexistence as a way to reduce barriers between people. It is with these principles in mind that we are here today to launch the Lebanon Ideas Forum in partnership with the Middle East program at the Wilson Center, an initiative that seeks to broaden the discourse about Lebanon that is free from sectarian and short-term political visions that hinder the quality of Lebanon's democracy. We couldn't be more proud to cooperate with the Wilson Center on this initiative. As an academic, and the only U.S. president with a PhD, Woodrow Wilson believed in an institutional framework that made the world safe for democracy as a key to pursuing peace. At the Lebanon Ideas Forum, we hope to honor that legacy by creating an environment where we can discuss the foundational elements that will guide policymakers and donors towards supporting a sovereign Lebanon that is representative of all its citizens equally before the law and at peace. We are honored to have Lebanon's Foreign Minister, His Excellency Gebran Bassil, with us today. And before I begin, I would like to give special thanks to the Honorable Jane Harmon, Henri Barkey, Hale Esfandiari, Kendra Heidemann, and Julia Romano for their hard work. I also would like to recognize and thank Ms. Mona Yakubian, who I think is here today, for her success in previously managing the Lebanon Working Group for so long, which this initiative partially seeks to recreate. And finally, a special acknowledgement to our founding board member, Charles Edouin, for his continued guidance and leadership. Also, I would like to recognize Ambassador Abdallah Abu Habib, Ms. Carla Jazar, Chargée d'Affaires of the Lebanese Embassy, and Congressman Nick Rahal, who are all here in attendance with us today. And there he is, good timing. So thank you for your time. And on behalf of our honorary chairman, Mohammed Safadi, and our board, I welcome you and I hope you enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. Before I welcome you, I want to say, Ambassador Abdullah, I'm very happy to see you, but I also have to learn how to make entrances like yours on time. Mr. Foreign Minister, it's a pleasure to have you here. As you heard from Lara, we are initiating or inaugurating the recreation of the Lebanese Ideas Forum, which will be an ongoing endeavor here at Wilson, and we will bring in all kinds of people to come and talk and also have small in-house discussions with experts. But you're here obviously to start this process, and clearly there's a great deal of interest in what you have to say. Let me start with the first question. I mean, you're here visiting Washington because there's this meeting on combating ISIS. First of all, let me ask you how you see Lebanon's role in this effort, and what do you think is of the American strategy on fighting ISIS? Do you see a difference between President Obama and President Trump? I mean, we would like to know. So let me start with that. I mean, how do you see Lebanon's role in combating ISIS? What do you think you've done, and what do you think of American strategy?
First, allow me to thank you for the opportunity you are giving me to address such a distinguished audience and to be part of that program where I can highlight the importance of the role of my country in the fight against terrorism in different fields. Each one needs a long explanation on the military aspects, on the ideological aspects, on the financial ones, on the judicial also ones where Lebanon is effective. First of all, Lebanon is on the front line of fighting the terrorists. Our army is on the borders defending the country, where Syria, Iraq, Libya, and so many other countries in the region collapsed or failed to confront Daesh. Lebanon succeeded, and our army defeated Daesh on our borders. Second, we were part of provoking somehow the international justice to take action against the terrorists who made the Mosul attacks on the Iraqis. Third and most important, and this is the unique role of Lebanon, because of the unique model that we represent. You know, Lebanon is formed of it's a puzzle of religions. We have 18 religions in Lebanon, and we are able to live together. This is our message, and we have the uniqueness of having the parity in power sharing between Muslims and Christians. It is what is mostly needed to confront the terrorists, because diversity is the antidote to terrorism. Daesh needs to create chaos in order to exist, and Daesh needs to create a monolithic society that would accept the obedience to the caliphate state. Lebanon, the model of Lebanon of coexistence, is exactly the anti-model of Daesh. And this is the ideology that you need to have in order to confront Daesh. It's not a matter of land, of geography, because this ideology is like a virus. It can spread everywhere. It has no limits, no boundaries. It's not only military. Maybe the fact that Daesh was able for the first time to have a land gave it some power in terms of financing its activities. But this is something that can be decentralized. So it's only through ideology and through preserving a model like the Lebanese model that you can really counter Daesh. And I think this is the role of Lebanon, and this is where Lebanon is a real partner in this fight against terrorism.
So do you think the United States has the right approach to fighting Daesh? I mean, what would you like the United States to do with respect to Daesh, with respect to Lebanon in this?
I would, first of all, on your question on the difference between now and before, no one can tell. I cannot tell. I cannot judge.
I was hoping that somebody who can tell us, because we don't know either.
Tomorrow for us is a beginning of something. I hope it will be new and more effectiveness, because frankly, being part of that coalition since it existed 3 years ago, I cannot believe that a coalition of 80 countries cannot defeat Daesh after 3 years. I believe that the UN system failed to counter Daesh in all means. I gave you an example of the judicial track that we pushed for. We did not see yet any condemnation, judicial condemnation of Daesh, where they, they show and they use the promotion of their terrorist acts by burning people, by decapitating people, and they show it. And they terrorize people through this, and they declare their responsibility. We did not see any judicial action in place. Actually, the international justice, all the system is in question. These are war crimes. These are crimes against humanity, where nothing happened. The ICC. What is the role of ICC, for example? What is the role of all the countries who are part of? We are not part of the ICC, and yet we took an action. We informed the Prosecutor General of the ICC of what happened in Mosul, and we gave some information in this regard. We saw nothing happening. If such a crime were forcing hundreds of thousands of people to move and giving them only the right to choose between paying any fees for existing or declaring their Islam instead of any religion that the religion they are affiliated to, or accept to die under the caliphate rule. And no one took any action about it. So I don't think that this is a limited ability of the Western countries to take. Even on the military front, after the first attack was launched in, I guess, 2014, if I'm not wrong.
June 2014.
Okay, you can tell me that Daesh was contained and more land is liberated, but this is far from achieving the eradication of this Daesh name, which can change from a place to another. What about Mali? What about Sudan? What about Nigeria? And even in parts of Asia, Indonesia, Daesh is spreading all over. So I think that much more should be done.
And in fact, the problem is not just Daesh, because it's also Al-Qaeda, because Daesh can disappear and Al-Qaeda can come
Daesh
back.
is a name.
Right. Al-Qaeda is another name.
You know, I can tell you in Lebanon, if you see the record of these people, you know, they changed names and organizations, and Daesh is an ideology that existed long time ago. Even we, the Lebanese, we faced Daesh 100 years ago. Yes, part of the Lebanese had to flee Lebanon. The third of the Lebanese had to flee in 1915, and they came here to the United States and to Latin America. And the second third died under the embargo of Lebanon, and we are the third remaining. So we faced Daesh all along our history. And this is why our existence in that part of the world is very important. And this is why we are natural allies to do this fight.
You didn't mention the refugees. I mean, you heard Jane Harman talk about the 1.5 million refugees now having reached Lebanon. And in fact, you know, you have other countries that say, oh, we're doing the most on refugees, and we have the greatest burden of refugees, yet Lebanon and in fact northern Iraq are probably per capita basis are the two places that have taken the most refugees. But you also have been critical of these refugees coming to Lebanon. So how do you envision what will happen to these refugees? Where are they located mostly? Where do they come from in Syria? Do they have a specific location, or is it from anywhere?
Actually, Lebanon is not to be compared to any other country in terms of its ability to receive refugees. The number is unprecedented. It's the first record in history. Per capita and per square kilometer, we have 200 displaced Syrians and Palestinians, refugees in Lebanon. 200 per square kilometer. So if you calculate this number to any state here in the US, you can imagine the number, how big it is. Or we have 25 to 30% as registered displaced Syrians in Lebanon of our population. The non-registered with the Palestinians, the amount goes up to 50% of our population. So this is unprecedented, and the ability to receive them is only given to the Lebanese population, because we have a high capacity of adaptation to a similar situation. Now, where do they come from? They come from all over Syria. Why they come to Lebanon?
But they're mostly Sunnis, right?
Not necessarily. It's because the Sunnis are the majority of the Syrian people. they are mostly Sunnis in Lebanon, but they come from all regions and from all religions. It does not have to do with religion. This is something that is mainly related to the fact that some of the Syrians had to flee Syria because of the security situation, for political reasons also. But also the Syrians like to come to Lebanon. We used to have 500,000 Syrians before the war because they are attracted to live in Lebanon. And whenever you offer them a better opportunity outside Lebanon, they will take it. The same they did to come to Europe, to Canada, to the US, or to any other country. I believe this is the big loss, to lose the good Syrians in Syria, the moderate elements of Syria. And this is how you give more space to Daesh. And this is how I see that these people were replaced by foreign terrorists coming from more than 80 countries to Syria. So this movement of people is very dangerous and is directly related and correlated to terrorism, because displaced people are more vulnerable to extremism, and they are used in their needs, and they are easily provocated under religion factors or under their need to live. So whenever you see a gathering of refugees, this is a place that offers the best conditions for the recruiters. And this is what's happening in some of our hazardous Syrian camps around some. For example, if you see Arsal, how it's surrounded by the Syrian camps, you see why it is a weak part of the country and why Daesh choose to attack Lebanon through that part. Anyhow, Lebanon was able until now to survive, but it is a situation that we cannot sustain anymore, nor the international community can sustain their living in Lebanon, and nor the Syrian society can sustain to lose its diversity, because then you will have Syria turning into a permanent place for terrorism.
Except that for them to go back to Syria, you have to resolve the Syrian problem. And how do you think, from a Lebanese perspective, how do you think this should be resolved?
Politically, for sure. There are things on which we all agree. This is left for the Syrians. We chose to distance ourselves from the.
But the Syrians can't.
But what we cannot distance ourselves from is we have the Syrians into Lebanon, and we have the terrorists coming from Syria to Lebanon. But all in all, I think that we all agree that we have to have a united Syria, a secular Syria, because having a sectarian Syria like we are witnessing now is a recipe for continuous extremism. The main issue is that when extremism is faced with more extremism from the other side, whether it is religious or whether it is violent, like we are seeing the war and the conflict, you will have more terrorism. And the only solution in Syria is political, by having a regime that can cope with power sharing among all the religions in Syria, like we had in Lebanon after our war.
Fair enough, but the current regime obviously failed at power sharing, as you call it, right? It has not shared power. That's why you have you've had this revolution. This is why people did not revolt because it just occurred to them to revolt, right? There was fundamental reasons why people revolted. So
that was before the war. Now after the war, before the war in Syria in 2011. Now you have a new situation that part of the solution is for the regime and the opposition to accept to live together and to govern together.
So you
even when we talk of the regime, it is the people who support the regime also. It's not the regime by itself.
fair enough.
It is the fact that Syrians are fighting each other.
Right.
even whoever is supported by whoever, at the end, the Syrians are fighting. And those Syrians from both sides have to agree together.
And
This is the lesson that we learned in Lebanon after 15 years of internal war. We always advocated for the fact that it's the war of others in Lebanon. It's not the war among Lebanese, but the Lebanese fought each other. And at the end, they accepted to govern together the
but
country.
it took 15 years.
It took 15 years, and until now, another lesson to draw from Lebanon is that whenever you have a ready-made recipe from outside, it will not sustain. It will not sustain itself, and it will not be a durable solution. You have to have it an internal driven and an internal led process. So in Syria, you cannot impose a solution from the outside, whatever it is. Only the durable solution would be one that is adopted by the Syrians themselves and that would correct itself internally.
But it doesn't seem like at the moment we have any movement towards that. I mean, at least the Bashar al-Assad regime doesn't seem to want to share power at this stage. So would you encourage them to share power?
I don't think anybody in Syria had the luxury to choose not to share with the other. It's the situation on the ground, so it is not the choice of somebody. It is what it is imposed by what happened after 5 years or 6 years or 4. So this is the only solution, or else the war will go on, and I don't think anybody can afford to have the war unless supported by the outside, which also failed to have a solution. We are getting from this only more terrorism and more extremism in a country that was characterized and had the particularity of having a secular system.
Let me move to another subject. President Aoun, whom I assume you know quite well, 2 weeks ago on a visit to Cairo said that Hezbollah was an essential complement of the Lebanese army's actions.
Of the Lebanese?
Army's actions, that's the quote he gave. So if that's the case, right, let's assume that that's the case, why is Hezbollah then fighting in Syria, in Iraq, and in Yemen? Clearly, these are not part and parcel of what President Aoun has called defending Lebanon from Israel, which is a prime example that Lebanese show. Doesn't this undermine Lebanese sovereignty? Because in a way, it kind of pushes the image that Lebanon is nothing but Lebanon is subservient to Iran. Right? So how do you explain Hezbollah's actions beyond Lebanese borders?
Yeah. First of all, I'm the foreign minister of Lebanon.
Yes.
And I don't talk for Hezbollah.
Well,
Hezbollah talks for himself.
I'm asking you as
No,
a
but
minister.
this is general, because what Hezbollah says or does can be answered by Hezbollah. Our position is the official position of Lebanon, where the president meant by saying this regarding Israel, and where all the Lebanese agree that the resistance against Israel was needed when we had to face Israel or to liberate our land. Our official position is to distance Lebanon from the problems coming from Syria or any other crisis in the region. And in this regard, we are seeking more assistance to the Lebanese army, to have more strength to the Lebanese army, and more strength to Lebanon, to the government, to the institutions of Lebanon. We have to accept that we have two challenges, two threats. One coming from Israel. Israel is always aggressing Lebanon, and we need to defend Lebanon. And on that, we had an agreement with Hezbollah that we need to protect Lebanon, not to attack others. We need to protect our sovereignty, and on the future, we need to have a defensive strategy in which Hezbollah and all the Lebanese will be part of it and will agree on it. So it has to turn into a national strategy that is achieved by dialogue among the Lebanese. And this has to be reached along our recuperation or restoration of our occupied lands. Another threat that we have is from terrorism, which is coming from Syria, but which is also coming from inside Lebanon due to this ideology that we mentioned as spreading like a virus. So even if you don't have it close to you in Syria, it is embedded in some minds, and you have to take it out. And in this, it is the responsibility of the Lebanese forces, the Lebanese armed forces and the security forces of Lebanon to take the challenge of keeping the internal peace in Lebanon, including fighting the terrorists. And we also all agree on this. In our national unity government and our ministerial declaration, that was very clear. And that is something that we stick to in Lebanon. The president, the prime minister, the government, and including Hezbollah, they know that their role is not to implement the law inside Lebanon. It's the role of the government of Lebanon.
Yeah, but you still can't explain why Hezbollah, which is a Lebanese movement, which is close to the government, is now fighting in Iraq. I mean, you can say Syria, okay, so Syria is close to, you have to fight the terrorists in Syria. Do you have to fight them in Iraq? Do you have to fight them in Yemen? I mean, in fact, the government of Lebanon is ultimately responsible for the actions of Lebanese citizens. Right? So if Hezbollah is doing whatever it wants without asking you for your permission, then there's a problem with whether or not you're sovereign.
Yes, actually, as I told you, our agreement was to stick to the Lebanese borders. Now, in Syria, it's a complicated situation where everybody interfered. From Lebanon, from all sides, unfortunately this happened, and from all foreign countries. Everybody interfered in Syria. And this has become a problem that is beyond the capacity of Lebanon to solve. And you see, tomorrow we have a reunion of 65 countries. And still, after so many meetings of the ISSG, the International Support Group for Syria, so many formats for having a political solution in Syria, and this did not reach a happy end until now. So yes, I cannot say that the government of Lebanon is able to solve the situation where the international community did not solve yet. We are paying the heavy price of what's happening in Syria, and among this is the intervention of Hezbollah inside Syria.
And Iraq.
I'm not aware of it in Iraq.
All right. On that note, let me open it up to questions from the audience. Please wait for the microphone. This lady over there.
Hi, thank you, Your Excellency, for your remarks. My name is Nadia Alami. I am an international...
Alami also?
Alami.
Alami.
Half Lebanese. أنا علمي.
You are, after all, the Minister for Immigrants as well, right?
No, yes, you have Alami, Alam, Alemi, Alam.
في علمي
علمي.
All right, please ask your question. Otherwise, it's going to take you back to Lebanon.
No, actually, I'm half Lebanese as well, but the other half is Zamanian. So actually, I wanted to ask you a question, but I wanted first to agree with you that there are several institutions, international institutions, that have failed us as people, including various governments. I would say the US, and in the case that I'm going to mention now, also the Lebanese government. I know you are aware of the case of Nizar Zakka. He is a colleague. We work in international development, and you know he was kidnapped by the Iranians. And for the past 6 days in particular, he has been subjected to the massive physical abuse. I know your embassy in Iran knows about this, and they have been informed. But I wanted to ask you in particular, because I believe you could have the answer to everything. My question is, why didn't you use the master key that you have to release one of your citizens who was kidnapped by Iran? Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't have the key even to solve issues in Iran, not a master key. And in my capacity as a foreign minister, I did everything I can to solve that issue, and we're still trying under you know, the limitation that we have, and under the case that is taking place in Iran. We are continuously reviewing that issue and claiming the release of Nizar Zakka from Iran.
Do you think it will happen anytime soon?
I cannot tell. We expected it to happen before, and it did not.
Questions?
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for being with us today. You mentioned the many challenges to the Lebanese armed forces. By the way, I'm full Lebanese, former chairman of the Lebanese caucus in the Congress of the United States, all 6 of us. The previous administration, in my opinion, was of tremendous help to the LAF, thanks to a lot of people in this room, including the American Task Force for Lebanon, who lobbied very hard with our Pentagon, State Department, various people in this town to get help to the LAF. I noticed recently the chairman of CENTCOM was in Beirut. Do you feel you're going to get the same help for the Lebanese army out of this administration, hopefully more than you did out of the previous administration, without getting into where the previous administration was in Syria? But as far as Lebanon and the LAF, I thought the previous administration was pretty good compared to previous years.
You know, frankly, if the current administration is serious about fighting Daesh, the first sign would appear in Lebanon by increasing the assistance to the Lebanese army, because this has proven to be very effective. Even General Votel, when he visited Lebanon, he said that it's paying back, not for Lebanon only, but for the US also. We are fighting not only for Lebanon, we are fighting for the whole region. We are fighting for you. And we were able, with a small army and very old weapons, to defeat Daesh. And we are the only national army in the region who succeeded under several attacks from Daesh, where others in Iraq did not. You know, the Iraqi army, how much aid it got from the United States over so many years. And they failed in the beginning to do it. We alone, we succeeded to defeat Daesh. And we are here in this visit taking advantage to meet with so many congressmen to ask them to increase the assistance to the Lebanese armed forces. You know, Lebanon is a real asset for the United States. It's a real asset for humanity, where you see the divisions prevailing everywhere. We in Lebanon, we succeeded to have a national unity government. We will hopefully succeed soon to have a new electoral law and to strengthen, to consolidate our living together. This is the main challenge, is will the humanity be able to accept the difference and have the tolerance prevailing over the violence of Daesh. And Lebanon, until now, with all the burden that we are having, with more than half of our population of refugees, until now, we are giving the best example of how we can live with our differences. The Lebanese army is solid, despite that we have inside this army Shias and Sunnis and Christians, where you see them fighting in the region against each other. You see them in Lebanon fighting side by side against the terrorists. This is unique. And this is something that we should not only promote, that we should give all the possibility to be replicated in the region. Only the national armies, I believe, can face Daesh. You may succeed in the US, to win a battle on the ground or more, but you will never succeed to take the place of the nationals in any countries who will be able by themselves to defeat this ideology of Daesh. So also in your influence and in your previous experience, I think that this is a message that we need to spread. Lebanon needs more support, and we need to avoid any kind of negativity about Lebanon when all what we are offering to the humanity is positive.
The lady in the white jacket.
Thank you. My name is Marie Swade from the Center for Victims of Torture. I want to touch a little bit on the issue of refugees that you talked about, and I'm wondering if, as a message that you're bringing to the U.S. also, is sort of the issue of resettlement and supporting Lebanon through, through the resettlement system and through support through foreign aid and other things aside from the military aid factor. If that's a message that you're bringing and what the receptivity to that has been, either in the administration or in Congress or otherwise, and whether the language and the rhetoric and the executive orders that we've seen have had an impact on Lebanon on the ground.
Actually, I don't believe that resettlement is a solution. It proved, first of all, to be dealing with a very small portion of the refugees. No matter how much you can take, it will be big for your country, whether your country is small or big, and it will be minimal to our country. And on top of this, the main issue is that the whole world needs to have the Syrians in their country. It's a big loss for Syria, for the diversity in Syria, and for your country if you receive immigrants. This is not healthy for the sake of diversity. And also it proved to be not effective at all. And again, the only solution is to keep the people in their homeland and assist them where they are, because it's even cheaper for anybody. We have the example of UNRWA. Look how much trouble we are facing to get the needed funds for UNRWA, and we're never being able to get them. And with time, the taxpayers will not accept to keep on subsidizing the living of a whole people in another country. Why? Why should you do this? In the name of humanity, these people should stay in their land. And this is the kind of assistance that we need to encourage the Syrians to go back to their country. They are needed there because they are replaced by the extremists. And this is disrupting the national and the social fabric of the societies. And more important, This is actually making a segregation of religions in our region. Instead of having, for example, for the Christians, instead of having the Christians in their place where they were born, where Christianity came from, and if you lose the Christians in that region, how would you preserve it in other places? And how would you convince the West not to have the Islamophobia, which is very dangerous, I believe, for the West and for the East, for the Christians and for the Muslims, because it's unreal. Creating so much fears about Islam is not healthy, and it's not the reality about Islam also. So extremism from one side, which is the Islam side, is creating more extremism on the other side, East and West. And this is the importance of Lebanon, of bridging between the East and the West, of bridging between Islam and Christianity. But if we accept the fact that Christians cannot exist anymore in Palestine, in Bethlehem and Nasra, how can you convince the whole world that coexistence is possible? So I believe this is where Lebanon needs the real assistance to preserve that model of coexistence. And this is far beyond assisting the Syrians themselves or giving some aids to the UN agencies. And I believe that with the new administration, we have more chances to be heard in this regard.
Thank you. George Cody, formerly from the American Task Force for Lebanon. Welcome, Your Excellency. I have a three-part question. One is regarding the refugees. Last Thursday, Prime Minister Hariri at the Lebanon Economic Forum stated that the refugee crisis is a disaster affecting everyone in the country. Given the fact that the government estimates there are 1.5 million refugees, Syrian refugees in Lebanon, are there any specific plans being done now, taken now, to prepare for the return of those refugees once we hope when the conflict ends in Syria? Is there any planning that's taking place right now? Secondly, do you anticipate that there will be elections, parliamentary elections in May in Lebanon? And if you could give us the status of the electoral law, where that debate is taking place. And then the third one is...
This is a purely Lebanese question.
No. And the third one is the discussion taking place on the difference between safe zones and no-fly zones. How do you see that unfolding, and what effect would that have on Lebanon?
First, on the Lebanese question, on the law, it is part of restoring the pact in Lebanon. The pact in Lebanon is about the coexistence and the power sharing in equality. And this is the uniqueness of Lebanon. The uniqueness of Lebanon is not the living together only. It is to live equally. And this cannot be completely restored without a new electoral law. And also Prime Minister Hariri said that this will be a failure on the Lebanese government if we do not succeed to have a new electoral law more representative of all the Lebanese. And this is a big challenge that will ensure the political stability of Lebanon. Without it, we will never be stable, whatever we get. And this is another challenge for Lebanon to prove its success and its uniqueness in spreading the message, the real message of Lebanon. And it is now that we need the international community to understand the need of Lebanon. It's not only about holding the elections on time. We've been holding elections on time since so many years, but with an unfair representation. Now I think that we have the chance to have a new electoral law and to have the elections very shortly after May, based on that new electoral law. On the first question on the refugees, yeah, I think this is somehow related to your third question, because we are working on a new policy paper in the Lebanese government on the refugees issue. And again, the government will fail if we do not adopt a process whereby we start the return of the Syrians to their country. It is not by forcing the Syrians to go back. It is by encouraging them. Because what is happening until now is encouraging the Syrians to leave Syria, unfortunately. And it's only now that we are accepting the idea that the return should be safe, should be dignified, yes, but it should not be left only for the choice of the Syrians, where some of the Syrians in Lebanon are economic migrants. And there is no justification for them to stay in Lebanon or else, or even we need to create or to take advantage of the already existing stabilized areas in Syria. You can name so many. I think actually most of the areas in Syria are stabilized and are ready, and they have the needed conditions for the return of the Syrians to them, especially those that are close to Lebanon.
But you can't force people to go back if they don't want to go back.
No, you cannot force them, but you can stop encouraging them to come to Lebanon or to stay in Lebanon. Because what's happening is encouraging them to leave Syria and to stay in neighboring countries, or this is very different. There is no justification also for people, for example, who are breaching the laws in Lebanon, or for people who are holding the title of refugee and who are permanently going back to Syria. You know, by law, by international law, any immigrant who is able to go back to his country is no more a refugee. So you cannot accept to have this happening and not seeing it or not dealing properly with it. And this is for the sake of the Syrians. This is for the sake of Syria. Again, this is for the sake of diversity in Syria. If you lose all these moderate elements in Syria, what would we all gain? So
look, everybody agrees with that. It's just a question of there's still a war going on in Syria.
Yeah, but there are so many regions in Syria that are already stable.
Today, maybe not tomorrow.
No. Can I tell you something, please? Did we see war in Tartus, for example?
But how many people from Tartus are in
Thousands, tens of thousands. Why?
Let me take that lady with brown jacket. And maybe I'll take another question quickly, and then we'll end with that. So
Thank
quick
you,
question.
Your Excellency, for your remarks. My name is Miriam Aziz. I'm with the Center for Justice and Peace Building. And while I agree
Can you
with
speak up, please?
sure. And while I agree that Lebanon has shown unprecedented numbers of accepting refugees, I don't think that displacement is. I think it's one of the reasons for making individuals more vulnerable to violent extremism. I don't think it's the only one. I think that a lot more conditions contribute to
Can you
that.
ask the question,
Mainly,
please?
sure, mainly that in Lebanon, Syrians are not granted refugee status. And Lebanon continues to request
granted
very
refugee status.
costly residency permits from Syrians. And I'm not talking about Syrians who fled Syria for economic purposes. I'm talking about real refugees from Syria. So my question is about whether Lebanon is considering a new policy that would no longer require for Syrians in Lebanon to get those very costly residency permits. Thank you.
And I'll take that lady quickly. Yes. And then that will be the last question. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize it. It's actually somewhat related and also related to the previous discussion. My name is Maya Ormsby, and I represent a non-profit organization that helps Syrian refugees in educating them online for free. The question is, what are the current policies with respect to adult professional education for refugees?
Thank you. You can answer.
From what I understood, I agree on many of the things the lady said on the first intervention. But again, we don't need to take measures that facilitate the stay of the Syrians in Lebanon and the integrations of the Syrians inside Lebanon, because this is against the Lebanese constitution. And the answer to this is that while not being Lebanon is not a signatory of the 1951 Convention on Refugees, and still I believe we are the only country who is abiding by its articles. And I don't think any other country can withstand what is Lebanon facing. So if anybody wants to, really help us on this, we did not get until now, after 6 years, any direct support to our Lebanese institutions. And if we need to apply the law in Lebanon, which allows, for example, for the Syrians to work in Lebanon in so many fields, but it does not give them the right for a doctor from Tartus again to come and replace the position of a Lebanese doctor in a Lebanese hospital. And if you here in the United States would allow this for the Mexicans, for example, we can be asked to allow it for the Syrians. So in the name of humanity, please respect the right of the Syrian people to live peacefully in Syria, and let's all work together to find a political solution and peace in Syria. This is the best assistance for the Syrian people. And for the second question, what was it? Education, yes. Now the ratio of Syrian students in the public schools in Lebanon is higher. Their numbers is higher than the number of the Lebanese in public schools. And we are offering everything we have, because we believe that educating the Syrians in Lebanon is much more important than leaving them in the streets or leaving them to the recruitment of the terrorists. But again, we deserve on this more assistance. It is all we got, is a promise of soft loans from international banks and institutions to educate the Syrians. So again, the Lebanese people are paying taxes to educate the Syrians, to give electricity to the Syrians, to give water to the Syrians, where they are deprived from all these services. And again, this is unprecedented. You will find no one country who is doing what we are doing to the Syrians. It is our duty towards a neighboring country, but it is also in the name of solidarity among the countries that we should all bear this responsibility.
On that note, thank you. Oh, you had something else to say?
No.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. And I hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to please stay in your seats. Please stay in the auditorium while the minister leaves. Thank you for attending, but we'd like you to please stay just for a moment while the minister can exit the room. Thank you all. We'll have the doors open shortly, as soon as the minister can exit the room.